The XM2 Wireless is finally here, and this is the WE version. The biggest questions with this mouse are that how is the click feel and how does it perform? While we will focus on these two things, I'll also cover some slight changes that the XM2we has over the XM1R, and of course also talk about a few important things that make the XM2we very unique at this price point. Let's start right away with the click feel. And the Kail Go optical switches actually feel quite nice in terms of how tactile and snappy they are. Still, the actuation is not quite as nice as it can be with some mechanical switches, and the click feel is overall a bit too heavy for my liking. The only thing is that if you actuate the buttons from the front, then these are light enough for me. Overall, the clicks on the XM2we are heavier than they were on the XM1R, and of course the Go optical switch also feels quite significantly different to the Kail GM8.0. And if you're interested in a sound test, here is a quick one for you. Overall, I'm quite happy with the click feel, and these are the most premium feeling optical switches that I've tried, but for example, the Pulsar X2 Bruce Lee edition that I have here has the Raisha opticals, and when I click these from the front of the button, these are more light, so overall the button design and the click implementation I prefer actually on the X2. Moving on to the wireless implementation, and the XM2we is using a Compex MCU and the 3370 from PixArt. In terms of motion, the mouse performs very well, especially when you consider the price, as we have about 1 millisecond of motion latency. With the XM2we, I'm actually consistently measuring lower numbers than I do with, for example, the Lamzu Atlantis, which I find a little bit weird myself, but my guess is that even on the Lamzu, motion sync still adds a little bit of delay, but it's pretty much impossible to prove. In other sensor related matters, the 1000Hz polling rate step is stable, and the XM2we has no motion sync, which is a good thing on the 3370 in my opinion. Moving on to click latency, and this is an interesting thing because it's a complex solution with optical switches, so the measurements I get with the XM2we should be the same as I get with the Pulsar X2 Bruce Lee edition. And the latency is pretty much the same with the XM2we and the Pulsar X2 Bruce Lee edition as it is with the Lamzu Atlantis, standard Pulsar X2s and the Fantacaria. If you are wondering why I gave this range for the XM2we and the Bruce Lee, the reason is that I haven't been able to instrument these CX mice with optical switches properly with the LDAT as I've done with previous mice with optical switches. So what I wanted to do is to confirm that the latency is what I suspect it will be, so I made some end-to-end tests against some other complex mice such as the Lamzu Atlantis. End-to-end results are not accurate enough for me to give a specific number, but it's somewhere in this range. That's it, let's continue. The big thing to keep in mind is that with optical switches, this latency is pretty much what you get forever, whereas especially with the Kail GM8.0s, you most likely will have to decrease the debounce setting at some point because of double clicks, and therefore you increase the latency. For example, you might end up with 6 on the debounce setting, so you will have 10 milliseconds of latency. One side effect that these optical switches have on these compact solutions is that they actually get completely rid of the idle delay. Definitely a nice side effect, but on the other hand this will mean that the battery life is worse, but as the battery is quite large on the XM2we, it should last at least a week for you in heavy use. Let's get to some other things in the mouse and talk about a feature that is often undervalued in mice, and that is the surface feel. This is something that Endgame Gear has mastered a long time ago. The coatings on the XM2we are the same as they were on the XM1R, and they do change slightly based on the color and the material. At least the Dark Frost XM1R that I have here does not feel quite as nice as the XM2we, which is the white color. The difference is very slight, but I can at least feel it. Endgame Gear also made some slight changes with the shell. For example, there is this little gap between the side buttons, and also the side buttons feel way better than they did previously with the XM1R, especially the back side button. It had quite a lot of pre and post travel and it felt quite mushy. And even the front side button feels a little bit mushy, but it does not have that post travel that the back button has. But now, There is barely any post travel unless you really use a lot of force, no pre-travel, really snappy side buttons. They also changed the scroll wheel structure pretty much completely. The scrolling experience is pretty much the same, but it's easier to actuate the click now. So overall, what do I think about the XM2we and how does it compare against the Lamzu Atlantis in terms of pricing and features? Well, the WE of course is quite a bit cheaper, at least here in Europe, as the Atlantis costs 110 euros and the WE is at 80 euros. So there's quite a bit difference, and as the performance is pretty much the same or even better in the WE and the coding is better on the WE, the only thing that Lamzu really has, I would say, is the click feel. The click feel is really good and these are actually light, which I really like. There is also a slight weight difference, so the Lamzu Atlantis weighs about 56 grams on my scale and the XM2we weighs about 63 grams. I can feel the difference when I lift these two mice, but not really in game. So my honest opinion is that no matter how great the Lamzu Atlantis is, how well received it was in 2022, there is almost no reason for you to buy it now. I kinda feel like an asshole for saying that there is no reason for you to buy the Lamzu Atlantis anymore. I mean, in the US, the price difference is about 20 bucks, so it's not that much. But still, the premium coding, the better performance goes over the lighter clicks, slightly lighter clicks in my opinion. So yeah, even in the US, do not buy this mouse anymore. Sorry about that, Lamzu. Then again, of course, if you already own the Atlantis, there is pretty much no reason for you to get the WE unless you really want that premium coding that the Endgame Gear mice have. One last thing to talk about is that should you now get the XM2we or should you wait for the W version? It's down to you really. The XM2we is one of the best bang for buck mice available at the moment. I would not call it a budget mouse, but the features and the feel and the quality that you get for the 80 euros or $80 is impressive. Then again, if you're looking for a flagship mouse with top tier performance, which I suspect the XM2we will have, then maybe you should wait for the W. I've really got almost nothing to complain about the WE. The click should definitely be lighter, but even after I've used it for a week in games, I did not have any issue with it. I didn't feel that these clicks weren't spammable or anything like that. I just prefer lighter clicks myself. So even that is kind of a minor complaint. The biggest complaint is that I still have not been able to get used to the XM1 shape, and I've used like 5 to 6 iterations of the same shape in a slightly different model. But of course, yeah, that is very subjective. That's pretty much it on this one. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you have a good day, and see you in the next one.